You are now entering the spoiler zone. The following podcast contains explicit plot details and pockets of profanity. You have been warned. The Exton Moss Experiment. Adventures in Wine and Space with Simon Exton and Ken Moss.
Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to the latest edition of the Exton Moss Experiment. I'm Ken Moss.
I'm Simon Exton.
And today we are looking at television programmes that are to do with Moonbases. This is following on from our Doctor Who, The Moonbase podcast a fortnight ago. Simon, what have we got on the list for tonight?
Well, we're going to be watching episodes of 4 classic British sci-fi series that feature Moonbases. So we're going to have Space 1999, where the whole moon gets blasted out of Earth orbit alongside Moonbase Alpha. We're going to look at UFO, and one of the episodes that focuses quite heavily on the moonbase that they have. We're going to look at Moonbase 3, which was a science fiction series parallel produced by the Doctor Who team back in the early 1970s. And we're going to finish off with an episode of Star Cops. Moonbase 3 and Star Cops are a little bit obscure because neither have been repeated since their original transmission. And actually, Moonbase 3 is the only BBC science fiction series that has been completely returned to the archives. It was originally fully missing, and all 6 episodes were returned from a foreign TV station, I can't remember which one, and that was back in the 80s.
Well, I'm quite looking forward to this one. I think largely because I don't know anything about it, and because you've just told me what the production sort of history of it is. Before we do, we need a gin review. It's time to get out the tonic screwdriver and take the lid off another bottle of gin. And today we are drinking Conquer Spirit Dorset Dry Gin. It's a 40% gin, and the info bollocks tells us, distilled in Bournemouth from British wheat spirit and New Forest spring water, the Dorset Dry is our refreshing take on a classic London dry. 10 botanicals well balanced and juniper led, with the bright and refreshing Dorset notes of elderberries, marsh samphire, and hand-foraged gorse flowers. So this is all the hallmarks of appealing to you, really.
It does, except the fact that it comes from Bournemouth.
Dover for the continent, Bournemouth for the incontinent.
It smells nice.
Oh, it does smell nice.
It actually smells quite gorsey, and normally with the Scottish gins, gorse is paired with heather, which is a stronger smell. Ooh. Now, Bournemouth aside, and I'm always prepared to leave Bournemouth aside, this is actually a very nice gin.
That's a bit different. It's sweet and sour at the same time.
You can definitely taste the gorse. You can taste the samphire. I'm not getting a wild lot of the elderberries, to be honest.
No, but I'm not sad about it because I would prefer to taste the other 2 flavours.
None of the flavours are overpowering. They're there. They're reasonably subtle, but they're very nicely blended. It's lovely and smooth. There's no nasty bitter aftertaste.
It's got the vague, again, we've had a few this tasting session, the vaguest hint of a medicinal edge. Vaguest.
No, I think this is lovely. I think it's smooth. I don't think there's any nasty medicinal or anything aftertaste. Bournemouth notwithstanding, this is a 5.
Really?
I really like this.
I'm not blown away. It's nicely made. It's an interesting taste. It's a bit different, but it's only a 3 from me. It's not one that I would race back to have another one of, but I wouldn't be disappointed if it was put in front of me.
Whereas I think this is absolutely lovely.
Okay, well, while we sup the rest of this, we should descend into the vaults and open the Black Archive. Here we are, surrounded by every episode of television that's ever been made, all lovingly preserved. What are you going to rescue for the general public?
Well, because the shows that we're looking at today have a very heavy sort of early 1970s presence to them, 3 out of the 4 are early 1970s. I thought we'd rescue one of the classics of early 1970s science fiction television, and that is Doom Watch. Now,
Does that not exist in entirety?
No, the entirety of season 2 exists, about half of season 1, and 3 episodes from season 3, which include the untransmitted episode. That episode has since been transmitted by reruns on UK Gold.
Right.
Doomwatch was the brainchild of Kit Pedler and Jerry Davies. Coming towards the end of their time on Doctor Who, they started a whole load of what-if thought experiments based around what was going on in then current science. Doomwatch is a government organisation that oversees scientific research, both government and private. There are episodes on noise pollution, toxic waste dumping, experimental chemicals. The first episode is all about a virus that can eat plastic and what happens when that escapes. And there's a very well remembered sequence in that episode where the virus escapes on a plane, how they manage to control the plane while all the plastic wiring is dissolving in the cabin. And then as it goes through the series, it gets a little less hard sciencey and becomes more social engineering. So there's neurosis from living in a high-rise block of flats, management of mental health conditions. And in the third series, along with the scientists they have working for Doomwatch, a psychiatrist comes on board. So there's that shift, particularly in the third series where Kit Pedler and Jerry Davies leave. They were the writing team. It was produced by Terence Dudley. And when you read stuff about Terence Dudley, it does seem as though he could start an argument in an empty room.
Terence Dudley's ringing bells Who-wise. Which one was he? He's ringing bells anyway, I'll have to look that up. Doomwatch, I seem to remember, was part of the slew of programmes that UK Gold repeated when that first launched, along with Blake 7
and there's been a fairly vanilla BBC DVD release, and it's one of my very favourite TV programmes.
Well, mine, in comparison, is totally different. I've only got scant memories of the goodies, but the bits that I've seen I have enjoyed it, largely because it's just so manic. There's a level of anarchy that it just about it gets as far as I can go with that. Monty Python, for quite a lot of the time, actually crossed the line. I don't enjoy great tracks of Monty Python, but the one that I've heard most about and I've seen bits of is Kitten Kong. And the actual complete episode doesn't exist. It's been cut to ribbons and re-edited abroad, and bits of it have come back, and this, that and the other. But that's the one episode that is missing in its entirety in its original form, and I wouldn't mind seeing it. Yeah,
the version we've got is the one that was sent to the Montreux TV Festival.
Yeah.
The Goodies is another show we can do an episode on.
Yeah, because we did watch the pilot one night, but I think that was more for pleasure than a recording session. So I wouldn't mind seeing more of it.
That was ages and ages ago, before we were recording things.
So without further ado, we shall hit play. And which episode are we watching?
We are watching Mission of the Darians, and this is from the 30th of October 1975. I have fond memories of watching Space 1999 when I was a kid. But the thing I really remember is the title sequence. And there are a few episodes that I remember reasonably well, one of which is Mission of the Darians. Realistically, you could watch any episode of Space 1999 and it would fit in. At the time that it was produced, Space 1999 was the most expensive British television production to date.
Is this from season 1 or season 2?
Season 1.
Ah, so one of the better ones, presumably.
I prefer season 1 to season 2. I much prefer Bergman to Meyer. A better theme tune, better production values, better stories.
100 square miles of spaceship.
Signal decoded.
Let's hear it.
Emergency. Emergency. This is the commander of the spaceship Daria. A major catastrophe has occurred. Large areas of our ship are devastated. Thousands of our people are dead, hundreds sick and dying. We who survive will perish without urgent medical and material aid. Please help us.
Kill it. Let's see it close up.
We're picking up life signs, Commander.
Maybe it's not too late, Commander.
What do you think, John?
The plot of this episode is that the moon comes across a distress signal being sent out by an enormous spaceship. They start off saying it's 20 miles long, they then say it's 50 miles long. It's huge, and it's putting out this distress signal saying that its nuclear reactors have exploded and thousands of people have died, thousands of people are dying. So the Moonbase Alpha team send a group of people across to investigate and see what they can do to help. They turn up and all their onboard equipment stops working. They go on board the spaceship and it's derelict and there's nobody around. There are 6 of them. They split up into 3 groups. One head off down one corridor and don't find anybody. One group heads off down another corridor and are found by a group of very pretty and elaborately dressed people who explain that they are the survivors of the explosion, which happened 900 years previously. There are only 14 of them, and this was basically an ark ship from a dying planet who were on a 1,000-year voyage to arrive at another habitable planet. And because there are only 14 of them, they've managed to preserve a genetic bank which they will use to recreate their species once they arrive at this new planet in 100 years' time. The remaining 2 members of the Moonbase Alpha survey team meet a couple of people dressed in skins and rags and end up going with them and being captured by a group of primitives who inspect all of them and decide that one of the native that they were captured with and one of the Moonbase Alpha people are imperfect. The native because she's very short in stature, the Moonbase Alpha security guard because he's missing a finger. And they put them into this booth and disintegrate them. And the final one there, who is Helena Russell, is described as clean. So as a treat for being clean, they're going to sacrifice her to their god. Just as she's being sacrificed, which is basically being pushed through the door to be taken away by 2 spacesuited figures who are described as spirits. The remaining 2 members of the Moonbase Alpha group hijack them, stun one of the spacesuited figures. The other one gets away with Dr. Russell and is followed by one of the Alpha team. The other remains behind with the primitives and this stunned spacesuited figure. He takes the helmet off the spacesuited figure and demonstrates that it's not a spirit, it's actually a person. And when he wakes up, forces him to take them to where their people have been going all this time. It turns out that the 14 Darians have been preserving their life by taking the survivors from the radiation damaged areas and using their organs for transplantation. And that's how they've survived the 900 years. That's how they plan to survive the next 100 years to get them to the planet where they say they plan to settle, and once the race is established, then they will allow nature to take its course and they will die. Just as they're explaining all of this to Commander Koenig, the survivors have been led to the 14 original Darians, kill the leader of them by chucking his head through the gene bank, so wrecking the gene bank. Koenig then says to the original Darians, your only choice now is to educate the survivors who've been on the lower levels for the last 900 years to be able to cope with a life in space, and then a life preserving the culture and civilization that the Ark was designed to preserve on the new planet. And he says, we will help you do that. And then the next thing you see is them disappearing off in their spaceship, so not providing a massive amount of help at that point.
Not really, no.
So how did you enjoy that?
Well, as with the previous episodes of Space 1999 we've watched, I think it's really, really good. The production values are obscenely high. It's almost movie quality. Beautifully preserved film prints. The story was pretty good. The one we've seen from the second season so far, I can't remember which one it was, it all seemed to be dialed back a little bit. Not an awful long way, but just a little bit. This first season I prefer. They've clearly got Joan Collins in to show off everything about Joan Collins and leave very little to the imagination. Even at one point there's a row of naked women. I notice they're all women. Naked women all ready to be harvested. So it's very much an episode of The Beautiful People. And as we were watching the thing, I asked where Barbara Bain's personal Vaseline...
fog machine.
Yeah, she didn't have one this time.
And she suddenly, for no good reason at all, ends up wearing a very skimpy little fur dress. before she's sacrificed.
Yeah.
And stories I've read from the production of that was that it's because she was jealous of Joan Collins wandering around in a miniskirt, so she wanted one.
Yeah, I'm not sure you can pull off a Joan Collins, love. You're up against stiff competition there.
They'd have been about the same age.
Really?
Yeah.
What, is Joan Collins in her late 80s?
Joan Collins is 2 years younger.
Is that it?
Yes.
Goodness me. Barbara Bain must have had a heavy milk round then.
Now, be fair, she's been in her mid-40s then, and I think she was looking pretty good on it.
Middling. There's either a lot of fags or a lot of drink involved there. Compared with Joan Collins, goodness me. Anyway, retracting the bitch clause just for a moment, the only thing that stands out to me every time we watch these is the production values. I just can't get my head around how much money they must have launched at this series to make it look that good.
And there was one complete 360. They just got onto the spaceship, and there were a number of different ways that they could go, and you could see back into the Eagle, and then they did a complete 360
with the camera, and so it was a completely practical set.
There were a few matte shots, but they were good ones.
There were good matte shots, yeah.
The model work was absolutely beautiful. The preservation of the print, and because this is the Blu-ray, and it just looks beautiful.
I can just not find any fault with it. So if you want something that looks good that's 50 years old or near as damn it, look no further. But I really like the stories. They've got a good cast and they're good stories.
Yeah, they're very entertaining. There's a lot of criticism that it's not particularly scientifically accurate, and you can level that criticism at almost all sci-fi television. Anybody who's a Doctor Who fan has no room to criticise other TV shows for lack of scientific accuracy.
The cricket ball sequence in Force Doomsday. We'll let that slide, shall we?
When I was working at Queen's, that's where I did my postdoctoral research, they used to do a Saturday afternoon lecture of how science fiction telly gets it right. I was talking to the bloke who was giving the lecture because I knew him reasonably well, and I was saying, there's no Doctor Who in there. And he said, yeah, we desperately tried to find some that we could show, and none of it really worked. My boss at the time was a big Doctor Who fan. He said, right, we need to sit down and come up with where Doctor Who gets chemistry right. In the end, the thing that we went with was the sweaty gel ignite bit from Pyramids of Mars, which isn't great, but it's better than nothing.
Anyway, what's next on our list tonight?
Next on the list is Moonbase 3. Now, Moonbase 3 is an interesting little show. It's a story of what happens on a base on the moon. It's a 6-episode series, and it was produced in parallel with the 1973 Doctor Who. I think they share sets with the Moon Prison on Frontier in Space, but I'm not 100% certain of that. Certainly it was Barry Letts producing, and it was basically the Doctor Who production team. One of the lead characters is the base's psychologist. They don't generally have much medical issues to deal with, but they do have psychological issues to deal with. And that's a really interesting way of doing things, because when you have a carefully selected population to go and work on a moon base, obviously they're going to be pretty healthy. There's not going to be any Quatermass 2. You wouldn't pass any medicals, but we're going to send you into space anyway. These are fit and healthy people, so any medics you'd expect to engage in a research program, because otherwise they're going to be sitting around twiddling their thumbs.
Yeah.
Whereas there is a lot of reasons for psychological adjustment to go into a moon base. Body clock, adjustment to gravity, all of those will play a psychological part. So it's interesting that they chose to have one of their leads as the base psychologist. The other interesting thing about Moonbase 3 is its archive status, because it was originally completely wiped, and then it was returned in the 80s, I think, from a foreign TV station. So it's the only example of a BBC science fiction series that was completely missing and has now been completely recovered. So we're going to watch the first episode, which is called Departure and Arrival. It was transmitted on the 9th of September 1973, written by Terence Dix and Barry Letts, and it was directed by Ken Hannum.
Stop it, Tom. It's hitting every control in sight.
Do you hear me? I'm going to turn her back on the gimbal. I say again, I'm going to turn her back on the gimbal.
No, sir. Don't do it. If you gimbal the main engine,
Both of us, you'll tear the ship apart, sir. She's coming round. She's coming round.
switch off, sir.
What?
If the main fuel lines rupture, she'll blow up. Switch off, sir.
I've never seen that before, but I really thought it was quite good.
It's one of those shows that I don't watch very often, and I tend to forget just how good it is. I mean, I actually spent quite a lot of that desperately trying to remember whether it's the prison sets from Frontier in Space. I don't think it is. The sets are achingly 70s, aren't they? They're beige, formed plastic monstrosities, and they seem to have gone beyond the idea that people might wear uniforms in space, and so 1970s space fashions seem to be romper suits. Anyway, just to say a little bit about the plot. Moonbase 3 is the European moon base, one of 5 that are on the moon, the others belonging to America, Russia, China, and for some odd reason, Brazil. I mean, very big country, potential to develop into a superpower. It's speculative, which is what we like.
They're growing white coffee on the moon.
It starts off with the base commander being recalled to Earth to discuss budgets, and his second in command needs him to sign off the authorization for his pilot to fly. Now, this is the pilot that he prefers to travel with. And the base's psychologist has some vague unease about the man's suitability to fly. She doesn't feel positive enough in her diagnosis to withdraw his ability herself. So she just asks for it to be considered. The rocket is on the launch pad. The pilot is getting more and more agitated that the commander isn't there at the moment. And the engineer who's in charge of mission control is getting a little bit worried about the pilot's level of agitation, but recognises that he's been signed off by the psychologist. Oddly, they vacillate between calling her a psychologist and a psychiatrist, and I work with both at the moment, and they're very different beasts. But anyway, that's a minor point, unless I'm in work, in which case it's a fairly major point to mix up one and the other. Anyway, the rocket takes off with the 2 men on board. The pilot, in chit-chat with the base commander, finds out that there was some question about his suitability to fly and has a bit of a breakdown. There's also a minor malfunction on the spaceship, which they would easily be able to correct by remote control from mission control. But the pilot, in his paranoid episode, has switched off the communication, so they're not able to do that, and goes out to try and fix the problem himself, severs his airline and floats off into space. So the base commander tries to right the spaceship himself, even though he restores communication so they can see what's going on with him. He can't hear the advice that's coming from the moon base. So he tries to turn the spaceship and gets it wrong and blows it up, so the 2 are dead. There is a new moon base commander appointed. He goes up and he takes the 3 people that he regards as responsible for this accident, the psychologist, his second in command, and the engineer, all of whom were aware that this pilot may not be suitable for duty, and none of whom actively tried to stop him. And he says, you 3 are coming back to Earth for the inquiry, you're suspended. So they go on to one of the rockets, which develops an error as they're taking off. They have to make a crash landing. And the 4 of them then have to try and set off across the lunar surface on foot and start running out of oxygen. And just as they're getting to the point where they're very dangerously low on oxygen, along comes a moon buggy to collect them. And you find out that this has all been staged by the new commander to demonstrate to them just how dangerous life on the moon is, and the fact that they have to work together as a team and follow their instincts. That's the end of the episode. That's setting him up as the new base commander with the 3 other series regulars, the second in command, staff psychologist or psychiatrist, and his chief of operations, who's an ex-astronaut himself. A little shout out to some Who alumni who are in it. The 2 big names are Michael Wisher as the pilot who blows up, and he's been in a whole host of Doctor Who stuff, and most significantly Davros in Genesis. And also Peter Bathurst, who played Hensel in Power of the Daleks, and Chin in Claws of Axos. And he is a Quatermass alumnus.
Yes,
he was the original Charles Green in the TV version of Quatermass Experiment. And Moonbase 3, he appears in a number of episodes of this as the commander of the overall European space programme. This was his final credited acting appearance.
It's the first time I've ever had a good look at him, really, beyond Mr. Chin, but that was, obviously the telesnaps don't give much away. He looks there almost...
Oh, you mean Vansel?
Yeah. I really enjoyed that, and I'd like to see more of it. It's very dark. We've just been chatting about this, that it's either going to go one of two directions. Either it's going to be really positive and send out the message that the future of space travel for the human race is a real community team effort, or it's going to end up a complete disaster. I'm erring towards the latter, just purely from the tone of the first episode.
Yeah, it's very dark. There's a lot of psychology in it, which is an interesting take, because normally in science fiction and space opera and things, it's medical problems that you expect. But like we were saying, you wouldn't actually expect too many medical problems on the moon. You'd expect accidents. And so you need medics to be able to deal with that. You need medics to be able to deal with any medical problems that arise. But actually, you should be dealing with a very healthy set of people. But psychological reaction to a very strange environment, to an unfamiliar gravity, although they did make a point of saying that they have artificial gravity on the moon, so they don't have that as a psychological problem, but it's the whole alien environment thing. Psychological reaction is an interesting direction to take it in. That's quite a key theme throughout the series.
Well, this is a co-production between the BBC, ABC and 20th Century Fox.
And was actually returned from the 20th Century Fox archives later than I thought. It was returned in 1993.
Well, they didn't waste any time putting it out on VHS, because I remember that.
94.
Yeah.
And actually, Terrance Dicks thought that they hadn't been successful with the series because it was too dark.
Yeah, I can understand why. If it carried on in that vein, then yes, you're going to have something relentlessly dark that people probably turn off from. Considering this is made concurrently almost with Doctor Who, or by the same Doctor Who team, it doesn't actually feel...
Doctor Who?
No. The production values, I can't say, or considering it was a three-way process, I can't say that I'm looking at it thinking, wow, they've launched money at this, or there's a lot more been spent on this. But it is well done. Particularly, I thought that the spacewalk by Michael Wisher's character at the beginning, that was actually quite convincing in terms of gravity and how he was moving about and what have you.
Yes, and the lunar surface, it's very good model work. I mean, I think the show was criticised at the time by being a little bit unrealistic of the lunar surface itself, because by that time we'd got actual images from the moon landings a few years earlier, and it's much flatter.
I don't think it helps that the hills they climb bend underfoot when they stand on them. I know. Probably bringing in some actual rocks or something that wouldn't bend or move underfoot. But minor niggles aside, I enjoyed it and I would watch more of it. Because it's not in the usual science fiction vein, it's more science fantasy, really. It's trying to be a sort of a prediction of the future rather than a...
So future history?
Yes, I would go with future history.
I've never really seen that as a genre applied to television programmes, but it's certainly a genre that applied to books. That's sort of immediately speculative.
Yeah, because I imagine that there's no aliens taking it. It's not that sort of feel, no. And I'm glad, because there's no room for it. There's enough going on.
And it was set in 2003.
I knew that from reading... Did Wikipedia come to my rescue last night? Yeah. Which I suppose, at the time...
that would have been 30 years in the future.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been unrealistic, considering there was a great scramble for the moon.
They'd only just done the moon landing, so nobody would really credit that it would be another 50 years plus before there was another moon landing.
But Barry Letts and Terrance Dicks, who were responsible for this, they were both very keen on scientific accuracy. Would be going too far, because they did acknowledge that in Doctor Who there was just this stuff that if you picked it apart too far it just didn't work. So you had to sort of gloss over that for the sake of the story. But the rationale behind this, and I know this from reading the notes, is that they thought there would be a significant gap between trips to the moon, because although there was interest in it, nobody could actually afford to do it. So they thought that it would be at least another 20 years before anybody really realistically went back and did anything. So they thought it through.
And they said that moon base had been operational for 8 years. So it started in 1995. So that would fit in with that timescale.
So what have we got next?
Next, we have an episode of UFO. UFO is another Jerry and Sylvia Anderson live-action TV series. It tells the story of Shadow, SHADO, which is the Supreme Headquarters Alien Defense Organization, which is an international setup to combat the arrival of aliens. The main headquarters of Shadow is underneath a film studio. There's also a submarine, and then there's a moon base. Not everybody turns up on every episode, but there's a big ensemble cast, which is slightly unusual for a TV series in that era. You expected a core series of regulars and others dotting in and out.
Actually, sounds quite interesting.
That comes across as a much more modern approach to making television. The specific episode we're going to watch is the Dalatek Affair. I have to be honest, it's not one of the absolute best episodes, but it does feature a moon base, and it's not a bad episode. It's one of the few that is more centred on the moon bases, and so a few
fits
episodes
in
that
with
do
the
that.
theme.
Fits in with the theme, and equally there are a few episodes that are more centred on the submarine. There are even one or two that are more centred on the film studio.
Right.
So it's an interesting mix, and they use all of their ensemble casts. The other thing about it, it's another massively earwormy theme tune.
Oh, God, not another one. I've had Space 1999 in my head all... Right. Let's find out then.
We're operating well within the prescribed frequencies, Colonel.
We'll check that, Miss Carson.
Colonel, we're open to check at any time. But to switch off the geoscanner means a complete write-off for all our work. We'd have to be persuaded there was adequate reason for so drastic a step.
More than adequate reason, Mr. Tanner. Our base radio lost total contact with Earth half an hour ago.
An immediate possibility could be increased solar activity.
The solar wind? The coronagraph check shows negative.
How about a simple radio fault? Do you, check your fuses, Colonel?
We've checked everything.
And now you want to check us?
Can you think of a more logical step?
Right. Well, that was UFO, the Dalatek Affair. It's an interesting little episode, possibly not entirely typical of the entire series. It's the episode that's most closely fitting in with Moonbases. So the plot of this is that there is a private company, the Dalatek company, who have got permission against everybody at Shadow's wishes to set up a survey station on the moon. So they send up 3 scientists. At about the same time, there's a set of UFOs that appear. Shadow team send their interceptors out to try and get rid of these. But before they get there, they peel off. The Shadow team just can't really understand why, but don't think too much more about it. The next thing that happens is a meteorite impacts with exactly that area of the moon. And again, they don't really tie the two in together. They then start getting radio blackouts, and they leap to the conclusion that it's the equipment of the Dalatek people who are blocking their radio signals. So Paul Foster, who's the Moonbase commander at the time, goes over to the Dalatek dome and is quite antagonistic towards them. Basically says, you shouldn't be here and we're not going to put up with you. And then disappears off. There's another radio blackout, but this time it's while a supply ship is landing, and the supply ship loses computer control and crashes, kills both the occupants. Foster goes back to the Dalatek installation and takes the control circuits out of their geological scanner, which it says is the only bit of equipment around there powerful enough to be interfering with their radio signals. Doesn't make himself particularly popular with this. The Dalatek boss shouts at the Shadow boss. They have a bit of an argument on a video link about how military shouldn't be interfering with business interests on the moon. There's then another radio blackout, and they realise that Dalatek's presence is incidental. In the meantime, the Dalatek team have found some alien equipment in the meteorite crater and spend a lot of time just taking photos of it and looking at it without actually examining it at all. Shadow realised that the thing blocking the radio transmissions is actually this alien artefact. And at the same time as they realise this, there is a UFO coming towards the moon base. So Shadow send a team over, destroy the alien artefact. They get their radio control back. They're able to guide their interceptors, who then destroy the aliens. In the meantime, the Dalatek base has taken so much damage that the Dalatek team have to come back to the military moon base. and when they come to leave there, they have their minds wiped so that they don't remember anything about the military secrets. The whole episode is bracketed by 2 scenes 6 months in the future in a restaurant where Paul Foster runs into the female Dalatech scientist who he was flirting away with, in between scowling at everybody else while they were all on the moon. And even though she can't remember who he is because of the amnesia drug that she's had, he knows all about her and uses that information to try and chat her up, and that's the end of the episode.
Let's get the actual episode out of the way first. I wasn't particularly gripped by it. There's nothing wrong with it. The sets are all nice. The basic plot's quite good.
It is the weakest of the 3 we've watched in this.
The shadow people are all miserable bastards. They don't even talk to each other in a nice way, so there's no sympathy with any of the characters. The colonel at the Shadow Moon base is pretty arsey with all the Dalatech people.
Yeah, and but then just expects the pretty girl in the Dalatech to start fawning over him just because he talks about an Italian restaurant.
Well, and it works, incredibly, it does work. But then he continues to be an arse. The Dalatech people find the installation that's jamming all the radio signals in a crater. They phone up Shadow and say, look, something here is probably causing you problems. I know you've taken away our really expensive, irreplaceable equipment.
And stopped the work that we were doing here, which was almost finished. But we'd still like to help you out. So they respond by firing a missile 200 yards from the base, which damages the base, decompresses it. They're all thrown about. They send a buggy to pick them up. And they do warn them beforehand.
They do warn them beforehand, but...
They destroy their base. They don't actually kill them, which is nice of them.
Let's be thankful for small mercies, but it's just the overblown way that they've just completely gone in heavy-handed with the Dalatech people who've done nothing wrong. Then right at the end, the pretty girl apologises, kisses him after he tells her that he's going to wipe her mind. It's the most rapey thing I've watched.
Yeah, that I'd forgotten about that bit, and that's troubling for a modern audience to watch. And then there's
Rohypnol in space.
Yeah, not funny really, but yes, 50 years ago, different times. Then when she has the amnesia drug, you see her having this weird erotic dream about him. And he sits and watches.
Sits over her as the amnesia drugs get.
Yeah, that final bit is really creepy and just a bit cringy to watch.
There's nothing about that makes me warm towards Shadow. The commander on Earth, he's another condescending arse. The women who work at the moon base...
Oh, with their purple wigs.
Their purple wigs and heavy eyeshadow. Anti-static, apparently, although it doesn't seem to affect the men. Through no fault of her own, overhears the pervy conversation while the highly professional colonel tries to chat up the pretty girl at Dalatech. Clearly isn't very impressed with his conduct, but remains professional. Oh, no, it's not for me. I can't actually believe it's Jerry Anderson. The model works excellent.
The sets are nice. Although, again, we have 1970s Space Orange.
So, yeah, I won't be rushing back to UFO. And also the UFOs. Bear in mind that that's the first one I've seen for years. I don't really remember it that well to start with. We've got UFOs on trajectory. Right, immediately scramble the interceptors and blow the hell out of them. Don't care what they are, where they're from, what their intentions are. Just blow the hell out of it. Kill it with fire. Let's not find out. Let's not wait to find out. Kill it.
I mean, having said that, prior to this, they have tried the whole communication thing and it hasn't worked. So it's not that there's a different alien every week. It's the same alien race with the same twizzly spaceship.
Yeah.
Their previous actions, because we're jumping in with an episode that's partway through the run. Yeah. And there is an actual pilot episode which details all the setup of Shadow, which we've skipped over.
Fine, yeah.
There are some much better episodes of UFO.
Less rapey.
That's fairly implicit in the definition of better. But yes, less rapey and better stories. So I think we should give UFO another go at some point. I'd forgotten quite how dull this episode was because it's not one I tend to revisit. I kind of prefer the Wand of Entham episodes to the George Sewell.
Where are they, on the submarine or in the film studio?
Predominantly in the film studio. There is a very good episode set on the submarine. Actually, there are a couple of good episodes set on the submarine.
The blonde commander on Earth, is he the anchor for the series?
Yes.
He is, yeah.
Yeah, there are basically three leads. There's Straker, who is the blonde commander, who's in overall charge. His second in command, George Sewell, in the first recording block, and then Wanda Ventham in the second recording block. And then immediately under them is Paul Foster, played by Michael Billington. And then all the other characters, your Moonbase group, who don't appear in every episode. You've got your submarine group, who don't appear in every episode. The Shadow Control group generally appear in most episodes, and that's mainly Lieutenant Ford, although there are a couple of others that dot around. And there's also the film crew. And quite a sensible idea, because nobody is going to question if weird-looking people in space costumes are wandering around, because that's just the film that they make. So that's quite a sensible disguise for them. But he doubles as a managing director of the film studio as well.
Right. It's not one of that I'm itching to rush back to. I do think the premise, how you've described it, I do think it's quite good. But based on that, I won't be rushing back to it.
There are episodes that will fit into other themes that we've got coming up. What we haven't done for that episode of UFO is Who Alumni, and there were
a few. Well, George Sewell we've already mentioned from Remembrance of the Daleks.
Yeah, there is also John Breslin, who was Captain Monroe in Spearhead from Space. He's one of the Moonbase technicians. Philip Latham as the managing director of the Dalatech company. He was obviously Barusa in The Five Doctors, and a number of other Time Lords and other appearances in the show. David Weston, who plays Mitchell, was in The Massacre and was also Birok in Warrior's Gate, although it's not a huge surprise that you would recognise him. And Clinton Grain was Evo in State of Decay and Stike in The Two Doctors. And as another Telefancy link, he played Captain Robert Virgin in Virgin of the Secret Service, which we will come on to when we do Victoriana. You'll enjoy that.
Splendid.
The final show that we're going to look at, we're leaving the 1970s and leaping forward to the 1980s, and we're going to watch an episode of Star Cops.
Like the ripple on the water sends a message to the shore.
Star Cops is another near-future space series. The action is predominantly set on space stations, although this episode is set on a moon base. The Star Cops are the police in space. They assemble a fairly ragtag group, but most of the day-to-day work of the Star Cops is done by part-time policemen. It's slightly odd in that regulars will suddenly appear halfway through the season, but because we're coming in at the end of the season...
You've got a full regular cast.
Yeah.
Okay. Star Cops.
The penultimate episode of the series from the 24th of August 1987, called Other People's Secrets, written by Chris Boucher.
Ron VT.
This is where I come to relax.
It's wonderful. Hannah would have liked it.
Hannah's your wife?
She was. She died a couple of months ago. 2 months and 12 days ago.
Sorry.
It was a good idea coming here, Alex. I know I've been breathing down your neck.
Oh, it's your job.
Perhaps. It's the scale of things that makes me so cross. Card tables and drink dispensers. I should have retired last year.
Oh, come on, Ernest. There's still a major force out here.
I'm an old man.
Yes. You're both old men.
But it has its moments.
This episode takes place later in the series when the team is established. There are 2 story strands that start off. The first is minor maintenance problems, machines going wrong, and a very overworked maintenance engineer who is very gruff and brusque and antagonistic to his colleagues. So, of course, he's Northern.
Yeah, of course.
The question is he overworked? Is he causing these problems himself? But they're all fairly minor. It's a games machine that stops working. It's a hot drink dispenser that goes wrong, an answering machine short circuits. All of those little trivial things that are annoyances. And while this is going on, there's a safety inspector who's made a surprise visit to the moon base. And he happens to be there to see many of these problems and makes it clear that it's going to negatively impact on his safety report. There is also a psychiatrist who arrives to work with the Moonbase personnel, And at the suggestion of the Moonbase director, the first people that she's going to look at are the police force. Now, Kenzie, who's the Australian police officer, is very antagonistic towards this. Most of them aren't wildly keen, apart from Anna Shun, the Japanese doctor, who is very happy to cooperate. But she's a very cooperative character in any case. Turns out that the psychiatrist is the ex-wife of one of the other inspectors, Colin Davis, who is your typical Sweeney chauvinist sexist, and the two of them obviously want to try and avoid each other, but end up being pushed into a situation together as the episode develops. Spring, the chief policeman, his second in command is a trained engineer, so goes to assist the struggling maintenance engineer, who's made accusations of things being not right and there being sabotage on the moon. So he's partly there to see whether there is actually any sabotage and who's doing it. And while he's working there, things happen that make it obvious that there is a saboteur at work. The psychiatrist, who's an incredibly unlikable character and antagonistic from the start and builds pretty much no rapport with anybody, starts to interview the police team, but the only one she actually manages to get to talk to is Anna Shun. And then the interview starts to happen with Colin, her ex-husband, and he's very jokey, she's very brittle and abrasive about it. And while this is going on, there's somebody sabotaging some wiring in the maintenance tunnels. It's revealed to be the safety inspector, which I have to be honest, by that point isn't really a massive surprise.
No.
And this is about halfway through the episode, so it's not the big denouement. He drops a screwdriver into some electronic equipment which short circuits out, and there's an explosion in one of the airlocks, so a section of the Moonbase decompresses. Groups of people are trapped in the areas where they were, and it takes time to rescue people, and in that time Davis and Parr come to a reconciliation. The Moonbase has lost power, so it's losing heat. So everybody's huddling away under blankets, and the two of them huddle away under the one blanket that they have, and the inevitable happens. The police commander, Nathan Spring, previously been a very close character, opens up about his past as a young policeman investigating industrial espionage at his father's company and finding out that his father was the spy, and reveals that to Kenzie. So their spiky relationship gets a little bit less spiky. And in the end, you have quite a long scene between the Moonbase commander and the safety inspector about how he doesn't know why he's done the things that he's done. Quite why he's not under arrest at that point is a little odd.
Avuncular, considering he nearly killed the entire base.
And then that episode ends. Star Cops is a slightly odd series. It's not actiony at all, and never really has been. It was like Moonbase 3. Scientifically accurate and thought-provoking rather than the action-adventure that UFO and Space 1999 were. So we've seen 2 episodes of 2 different styles of Moonbase story.
Yeah, first thing that hits you is there's not a lot of copping going on. I'm not actually sure what their function is on that Moonbase. I think it's probably one of those things you need to see more of. A standalone, probably that late in the run, isn't the best place to start.
See, I quite like that episode. I mean, I have seen the whole run, and it's generally good right the way through, but the style of episode changes quite dramatically from one to another. So there's medical mysteries, there's computer sabotage, there's more obvious crime stuff, whereas this is very much psychodrama. So again, ties in nicely with Moonbase 3.
Yeah.
Moonbase 3 is pretty much heavily psychodrama right the way through. Star Cops isn't. It's a more varied series. With this, the first half was slow, but once they had the explosion, it got a bit disaster movie-ish. I really enjoyed that. And if they'd speeded up it's the safety inspector, which was obvious. The psychiatry plot was interesting, and it gave the characters something to react to. The psychiatrist herself was awful.
She's dreadful, played by Maggie Orenshaw, but I mean, that's not against her, it's just against characterisation.
Yeah, it was the way that she was written. There wasn't an ounce of empathy or sympathy or anything that would encourage opening up, revealing secrets.
She was abrasive and...
Yeah, and the psychiatrists that I've worked with in the past have all been very, very good communicators, because that's the essence of their job.
I imagine that the vast majority of people walk into a psychiatrist's office slightly suspicious of general stereotype of psychiatrists. The last thing you want is to be faced with somebody who lives up to that stereotype.
Yeah. It's one of those that I enjoy when I watch. It's rarely something that I would put on as I fancy watching an episode of this.
Yeah.
But I'm always quite surprised by how much I enjoy it.
The production values are quite low, even in comparison with earlier stuff.
If you're comparing it to Space 1999, that was
a
very expensive series.
I think,
and so was UFO.
Yeah, it's very much of its time because this is sort of mid to late 80s, isn't it?
87.
Yeah, it felt quite Red Dwarf, whereas the incidental music varied between country hick and Button Moon. It was quite jarring at times.
Yeah, the incidental music was odd, and I've never liked the theme tune.
The theme song. For science fiction, interesting. Because the title sequence didn't grab me at all. I thought that was a bit bland and uninspired, to be honest.
But very 80s.
I just don't know what they were going for.
Yeah,
I imagine the pitch was something like a gritty, almost The Bill in space, or The Sweeney in space, or something like that.
With a big chunk of psychodrama in.
Yeah. It doesn't quite... It's a shame. I wanted that to come off, because the sort of the basic premise of presumably a police precinct in space...
Well, that's not quite the basic premise, because the majority of the policemen aren't there primarily as police. There's that little core that are permanent police, but most of them are part-time. So the job is basically being done by special constables. That's not really brought out in this episode. It's a bigger part of other episodes, and it's a really big part of the big finish, and are really well worth a listen. The stories are good. You know, I tend to think that Big Finish shines in its spin-offs rather than its main range.
Yeah, you've said that.
And Star Cops is very definitely an example of that. It doesn't have the full original cast. It's got Nathan Spring, Colin Devis, Pal Kenzie. Theroux doesn't come back, Anna Shoon doesn't come back, and the Moonbase Commander doesn't come back. But they have about half the regulars.
I think the standout for me of this session has been Moonbase 3. That I want to come back to.
Yeah, I've enjoyed all of them. I'm probably coming to them from a slightly different perspective because it's not my first time around the block with any of these series. I've seen all the episodes of all of them. With UFO, I've gone with the Moonbase theme rather than picking a particularly good episode of UFO. And we can revisit that and we can watch some more fun stuff. I still enjoyed the episode.
But I think even you were surprised by it.
It's a bit slow. I'd completely forgotten the dodgy date rape thing, which really jars. It's an episode I haven't seen in years, largely because I didn't find it particularly interesting. And UFO isn't a series I'd sit down and watch from beginning to end.
It's Jerry Anderson, though. I can't quite believe it. It's the equivalent of Parker coshing Lady Penelope, giving her a good scene to while she's unconscious, and then pretending it's never happened. Not really Anderson-esque, that bit.
No, that was all really remarkably creepy. But apart from that episode was a little bit slow. I enjoyed the Star Cops. I'm actually probably going to rewatch a few Star Cops.
The model work, the moon buggy stuff, was great.
And that initial model shot of the shuttle. Very streamlined shuttle.
That was a beautiful
lovely
shot. Yeah, that was a really nice shot.
But actually, the model work for all of the series has been really nice.
Been good.
There was one explosion in Moonbase 3 that was a little bit dodgy, but no more dodgy than any other 1973 model explosion. I mean, Jerry Anderson, you expect the model work to be fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you for listening, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope we encourage you, as ever, to go out and seek out these things for yourself. We should be back in a fortnight with the next episode.
Yeah, I would thoroughly recommend any of these 4 series. It depends what you want out of a TV series. Like I say, if you want thoughtful, more scientifically accurate, more psychologically in-depth, then that's Moonbase 3 and Star Cops. If you want something that's going to look pretty and shiny on the screen, not make quite as much sense, but a really entertaining watch, that's Space 1999 and UFO. All 4 of them I enjoy. All 4 of them I would highly recommend. The Space 1999 remastered Blu-ray is absolutely beautiful. The Moonbase 3 could do with the magic touch of the restoration team.
It could, because they're clearly NTSC prints. So they could do with the old unpicking that they've done for everything else. But
Yeah.
commercial value, I suppose.
But these discs were 2003.
They've come a long way since then.
Yeah. That would be nice for a re-release.
So with that, we shall sign off. We'll see you in a fortnight with the next episode. Thanks for listening again.
Yes. Hope you enjoyed. Hope this inspires you to catch a little bit more of the more unusual archive television that's out there. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye now.
The Exton Moss experiment featured Simon Exton and Ken Moss. All featured soundtracks are the property of their respective producers, and no infringement of copyright is intended. Title music was performed by the BBC Symphony Orchestra, and the programme was produced by Maverick Productions. For more information, please visit maverickproductionsuk.blogspot.com or find us on social media.